The battle was over, but the battlefield did not fall silent for a long time. The heavy smell of blood hung in the air, mixed with smoke, sweat, and wet earth. Where just hours ago swords clashed and spears shattered, now thousands of bodies lay scattered. Some were still, others moved slightly, letting out quiet groans. The victors were leaving, but the real story was only beginning. Because right after the fighting ended, the battlefield became a place where death turned into profit. The first people appeared almost immediately. They were not healers or rescuers. They were those who knew how to quickly find value among the dead. Soldiers from the winning side returned to the field, no longer in formation, but with a different purpose. For them, this was part of their earnings. They were not taught to feel pity. They were taught to survive. And on the battlefield, they took everything they could carry. Armor was stripped first. Heavy, expensive, often damaged, but still valuable. Metal was costly. Even a dented breastplate could be repaired, and a torn chainmail could be fixed. Helmets, gauntlets, greaves, everything was gathered into piles, sorted, divided. Sometimes arguments broke out over particularly good pieces. Fights could start even among allies. Weapons were never left behind. Swords were picked up from the ground, pulled out of bodies, wiped on cloaks, and tucked into belts. Daggers, axes, spears, everything was taken. Even broken pieces were collected. Metal could always be reforged. Nothing was wasted. But the fastest profit came from personal belongings. Pouches, rings, chains. These were searched for first. The hands of the dead were checked one by one. If a ring would not come off, a finger might be cut without hesitation. There was no time. Everyone knew others were coming behind them. Not only soldiers moved among the bodies. Behind them came camp followers, women, traders, servants. They worked differently, more calmly, more carefully. While the soldiers grabbed whatever they saw, these people searched for hidden valuables. They tore open seams, checked linings, found coins sewn into clothing. They knew where to look, and often they found more. They worked quickly. In groups, one turned the body, another searched, a third collected. It looked almost like a craft, refined, cold, without emotion. But there were still living people on the field. The wounded, those who could not move. Their fate varied. If it was a nobleman, he might be saved. He would be recognized by his armor, his heraldry. They would try to capture him alive, because he was worth money. If it was a common soldier, things were different. He lay among the others, bleeding, and often those who approached him did not come to help. A narrow dagger slipped precisely into a gap in the armor. Quick, without words. They called it mercy. But in truth, it was simply part of the same process. As time passed, new people arrived. Peasants from nearby villages. They came with families. For them, a battle was both disaster and opportunity. They collected everything left behind: metal, cloth, belts, shoes, anything that could be used or sold. They took even what soldiers ignored: broken arrowheads, fragments of shields, bent buckles. To them, these were valuable. Iron could feed a family. Horses were especially important. A living horse was a treasure. They were caught, taken away, hidden. People could fight over them even after the battle ended. Dead horses were not wasted either. They were butchered on the spot. Skin was taken, meat collected, bones left behind. Meanwhile, the smell grew stronger. Blood thickened, the ground darkened, bodies began to swell. In warm weather, the process was fast. Within hours, the field changed. Within a day, it became almost unbearable. Flies appeared. At first a few, then thousands. They covered the bodies, filled wounds, eyes, mouths. Soon came rats and stray dogs. They tore at the remains, dragging parts away. The battlefield slowly lost its shape. Sometimes the bodies were buried. Pits were dug, and dozens or hundreds were thrown in together. Quickly, without ceremony. There was not enough time, not enough soil. Sometimes they were barely covered, sometimes not at all. But not everyone was treated the same. Noble warriors were searched for specifically. Heralds walked the field, examining shields, symbols, faces. They tried to identify the fallen. This mattered, because these men had value. The bodies of nobles were taken away. They were washed, dressed, transported, sometimes over long distances. Sometimes the flesh was removed from the bones to make transport easier. Sometimes bodies were salted to slow decay.
Common soldiers, however, remained where they fell. No one recorded their names. Their lives ended in a single mass grave. But even after burial, the story did not end. Over time, graves could be reopened. Bones were taken out, crushed, reused. This was common practice. Nothing was wasted. Other figures came to the battlefield as well, not for metal or clothing. Healers, mystics, people who believed in the power of the dead. They collected fat, blood, teeth. All of it was considered valuable. Human fat was melted and sold as medicine. Blood was collected and used for healing. Teeth were pulled to be used by the living. It was disturbing, but it was normal for that time. They came at night, worked quietly, with knives and sacks. People feared them, but stopping them was difficult. The demand was too high. At the same time, another market existed, the market of prisoners. If a knight was captured alive, he became a commodity. He was not killed, he was guarded, because he could be ransomed. The sums could be enormous. A single man could be worth a fortune. That is why experienced warriors tried not to kill noble enemies. They looked for a chance to capture them instead. Prisoners were sold, traded, transferred. It was a whole system.
Confirmed. The
Everyone
provisions are
received a
logged
share.
here.
The soldier, the commander, the crown. Everything
Good.
was structured.
Proceed to the next group.
Over time, the field became empty. People left. Only traces remained. Disturbed earth, scattered bones, fragments. But even years later, these places remained active in a different way. Rain washed away soil, exposing graves again. Bones resurfaced. They were collected once more, sometimes by accident, sometimes intentionally. That is why, centuries later, archaeologists find so few remains. The fields of great battles are often empty. Because everything that could be taken was taken, but when for some reason the process was interrupted, something different happened. Where bodies were buried quickly and left untouched, they remained. And centuries later, complete sets of armor, coins, and personal items are discovered. These cases are rare, because usually a battlefield was stripped almost completely, down to the smallest detail. A medieval battle did not end with the last strike of a sword. It continued long after, in the actions of those who came after, in the way the dead were treated, in the way profit was made from death. It was a system, harsh, cold, but understandable for its time, where everything had a price, even human life. And that is why when you look at empty fields today, it is hard to imagine what once happened there, because almost nothing remains, only the ground, and it remembers everything.